This is Have You Met? My guest today has climbed Mount Everest and the 6 other mountains that make up the 7 summits. He's led an expedition taking 6 blind children up a 7,000 metre mountain, discovered an ice palace, climbed El Capitan, ice climbed up a frozen waterfall, parachuted, paraglided, skydived, he's kayaked down the Grand Canyon including lava falls, and he founded an organisation called No Barriers that has gone on to inspire thousands of people around the world. And he happens to be totally blind. Have you met Erik Weihenmayer? So, Erik, if someone had told you when you were 15, not long after you'd lost your sight, what exactly you'd end up going on to achieve, how do you think you'd have reacted?
Well, the thing is, when I was a kid and I was going blind, I was really, really frustrated because it was like a brick wall that was in front of me that I couldn't see through.
Yeah.
So at that time, I mean, like if you had said, oh, he's going to go on to climb Mount Everest or something, I probably would have had no understanding of that, like the magnitude of that, because I was just so frustrated banging my head against that brick wall, thinking, what's on the other side? Is there something on the other side?
Yeah.
You know, what does blindness mean for my life? Like, is this really my life? Like, it has to all sink in. And I was like, when I grew up in Connecticut, there'd be these raccoons that would break into your house at nighttime and eat your garbage. And then you come in the kitchen at like midnight and there'd be like this snarling little raccoon in the corner. That's the way I was. I was just like a snarling little raccoon, just lashing out at the world because I didn't know what my life was going to be about. So yeah, I guess I would have no clue, but I did have hope. I did have hope, and I did have kind of like, you know, this mindset of like life is a knife edge. Like on this side is fear and darkness and anxiety and uncertainty, and on this side is hope and adventure and excitement. And I always wanted to err on the fun side.
Yeah, for sure. I bet like when you were going through that period of just all that difficulty and adversity and loss, I suppose that line dividing those two sides became way more pronounced. Like there's the side of darkness and misery and the side of going on to achieve stuff.
Yeah. And also it felt, not to be overly dramatic, like a bit of a prison. Like I didn't know how to get out. And sure, the world had put me partly in there because of blindness, but I'd also put myself in there. And so I just wanted out, man. I had FOMO disease, fear of missing out, you know? I mean, I'm sitting in the cafeteria and I'm listening to all the food fights and all the jokes and life going on around me. And I'm like, really? Is this my life, sitting here on the sidelines, Donnie Dark, just listening to life go by? That to me was just killed me, just the idea that I was going to miss out.
Yeah.
So I always had this sliver of hope that, this open heart sort of idea in my mind that like, God, I wonder if what could I do? Could I turn this around somehow? Part of it was accepting blindness, I think, and saying, okay, you're not going to beat this thing, right? Like life is this constant sort of quest or investigation between what you can influence and what you cannot influence. And I think it's really, I don't know, maybe a smart thing to do to really delineate in your mind, like what can I influence and what can I influence? What's bigger than me? And blindness was like that. It was bigger than me. I couldn't do a damn thing about it. I wasn't using my cane properly. I was like walking off the end of docks and slamming my head into walls and falling downstairs. And so I said, okay, it's being beaten into me here that maybe I should accept this and I should start using the tools of blindness, a cane, learn Braille, learn how to navigate, like just embrace that this is my life. And and then start trying to enter the world again somehow in like a new way.
Yes, it must have been so challenging. How long do you think it took you to go from like when you're just sitting in your head, feeling darkness, feeling completely cut off from everybody on the sidelines, having all the opportunity to overthink, until you it clicked and you had that impetus, that drive all of a sudden, and you could see your way out, if you see what I mean?
Oh, so what is it now? April? So yeah, I would say it took me 42 years. No, I don't know. it's not like suddenly the light bulb goes on and you're great.
Okay. Yeah.
It's a layered system.
Yeah.
I said yes to wrestling.
Yeah.
I remember walking down the hallway one afternoon. It's like these moments that just get totally ingrained in your brain, right? Like walking down the hallway, the empty hallway with my cane that I just learned to use and saying, whew, I'm going to try out for the wrestling team. And I don't know, that many people. I don't know if I can do it. I've heard of blind people wrestling before, but I don't really, know that much. And then walking into that stinky wrestling room, and the team just totally embraced me like every other pimply greaseball freshman in high school, and that was my family. And so I think it was a layered system, as I said, of like kind of trying to step out, and then good things would happen. And so I started, I guess, connecting the dots that when you lay it out there just strategically in a good way,
Yeah.
that more times than not, good things will happen.
Yeah. So you're wrestling when you started doing that. Obviously, you were at a better place mentally by that point, even if not, completely where you are now. But you were on the road to improving. But physically, was there a moment during that like process? Was there a moment, or was it gradual, where you're like, okay, I can do this now. I can take these guys, and all of a sudden it clicked, or was it again gradual?
I guess it was gradual, but like I did love wrestling. Like I totally loved it because I could compete on an even playing field. And I don't know if this is universal for most people, but I I thought it was really important for me to be able to compete like with sighted kids in a sport where blindness wasn't like the top of the spectrum.
Yeah.
That this team and what we were doing was part of it, and blindness, sure, it was a factor, but I could be right in there in the ring. And so I started with an adaptation where we would touch fingers, and that would be the only adaptation that they would do for a blind person. So yeah, I think winning on the wrestling mat, and then I said yes to this opportunity to take part in this recreational program for blind kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, I grew up in Connecticut, and there's this center called the Carroll Center for the Blind, and my dad would drive me 3 hours up to the Carroll Center once a month, and then from there we would embark on these adventures with all these blind people, horseback riding or sailing or canoeing or tandem biking. One weekend they took us rock climbing, and it was up in New Hampshire, and it was these beautiful, beautiful granite faces near North Conway, New Hampshire. And these really amazing teachers took me under their wing. And I was kind of a scrappy little kid. And I remember feeling my way up the rock face, kind of like just being fascinated by the patterns that I was feeling in the rock and how to connect the dots and figure out how to leverage your body from point A to point B to point C in these really dynamic movements. And I was like, wow, this is adventure. This is such an engaging activity. It like takes every bit of my mind and body to figure this out. And the sensory perception was just amazing too. Getting up high on the rock face and listening to the valley below me, because I had started learning how to echolocate, which is like where you listen for echoes bouncing off of things, and I could hear the sound bouncing off of the rocks across the valley and so forth. And
Yeah.
so it was just like the full package of beauty and adventure.
That is amazing. I do want to circle back at some point to that echolocate, because it's something I wanted to talk about, the sonar and that kind of thing. Is
Right.
I remember that came up in your book with Daniel Kish, I think it was.
Yeah, he's the expert.
And
They call him the Batman.
yeah, it's amazing. I was yeah, just shocked reading that. It was so cool. But yeah, like I say, let's circle back to that. So you're climbing. Tell me how you went from that first kind of climbing expedition or climbing trip to Denali. I think Denali was your first of the seven
Yeah.
summits, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was a long process for sure, because I mean, for me, I wasn't thinking about Denali. I was just thinking, oh, rock climbing's kind of a cool sport. But like, this is in like the 80s, and I'm thinking, when am I ever going to rock climb again? So anyway, one of the guys took me under his wing and would let me come up and climb with him, probably like once a year. And then I went to college, and again, still was like on the, 2 times a year, go up to New Hampshire. There weren't rock gyms or anything back then. And then I got a job teaching in Arizona. I got a master's degree in education, and I took this big adventure to go out to Arizona, which was a great school, but it was also Phoenix being surrounded by rocks,
Right.
granite and sandstone and rhyolite, volcanic rock, and limestone, just everything you can imagine. And I joined the Arizona Mountaineering Club, and I connected with a substitute teacher at my school named Sam, who also climbed. So we were total weekend warriors, just rock climbing, learning how to set up anchors, how to put gear into the rock as you bring the rope up, and just in that wonderful learning process of rock climbing and having a blast. And then Sam, whose brain never really worked in a linear way, kind of worked in these like weird leaps and bounds. He said, "Dude, we should try something bigger." And I thought, "Well, like what?" He said, "We should try Denali." I'm like, "Well, that's so different from rock climbing in the desert, Sam. I've never hardly even camped out since like the Boy Scouts, It's when I
Yeah.
was 12 years old." So anyway, but I got engaged, and I guess maybe one of my good qualities is that I'm really impressionable. So I got really excited about this idea. Like, how far could I take this? Could I actually climb Denali, like this gigantic glaciated peak in
Yeah.
Alaska? And so we went around the country, in the weekends that we could get away, and would climb Rainier and climb Mount Hood and Mount Humphreys, the tallest peak in Arizona. And by the way, we didn't get to the top of anything. We literally got to the top of nothing. We
Yeah.
actually went to Long's Peak in Colorado in the winter, thinking that that would be very Denali-like conditions, and met with like 100-mile-an-hour windstorm that almost ripped our tent out from the ground. And so we retreated with our tail between our legs. And I got down to the parking lot. Sam had lost a snowshoe in the wind. It just blew away. So he was limping out with one snowshoe. And then I somehow lost my goggles. So my eyelids were frozen together. The
Oh,
wind
wow.
and the snow was hitting my eyes, and the moisture in my eyes froze. So I couldn't. I remember getting into the car and heating up the car and just slowly prying my eyelids apart.
Yeah. Oh, that must have been a weird sensation.
and
Wow.
and but I was like, dude, okay, this was either just an incredible disaster, or this was a huge success, because we took care of each other. We were in a really hard situation, and we took care of each other, and we got out down the mountain. We got down safely. And I don't know if we're going to summit Denali, but like we're in. I'm in. Like both feet are in the water now. And
Yeah.
so it's funny how your perception of an experience is sort of interpretive, I guess.
Yeah, no, definitely. And actually there can be more to learn, can't there, if things don't go all to plan. But like you said, you can take a lot away from it, and that, yeah, you looked after each other and you survived it anyway.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, there's something to be said in knowing that you can survive a really hard situation.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you would have faced a lot of those as the years have followed as well, I'm sure.
Well, then I got to Denali, and it was like so hard. Like there were days literally I got in my tent and cried like a middle school kid. And
Yeah.
it was so damn hard. And but we summited in 19 days. We actually summited on Helen Keller's birthday.
Yes.
Um,
Amazing
and
coincidence.
we didn't even know that till later. And then I got down into our igloo that we had built up there at our high camp, and I just sat there like, and I don't mean to sound like egotistical or anything, but I was like, I am a guy who just summited Denali. And like, I'm like, it changed in a way, like that landscape, that ruggedness, that severe sort of austere beauty of that place just kind of like gets into you, and you go, wow, like maybe I connect with this place. It was really bizarre, because the other half of me was like, what the hell are you doing with your life? This is not the easiest thing you could be choosing to do.
Yeah.
So there's always, like, as I said, that knife edge that you're walking.
That is just insane. So then when did you finally summit Denali? What was the year when you did it?
I was way back in 1995. I was like 25 or
1995.
26
Yeah.
years old, something like that. Yeah. And we all summited in the 19 days. So it was really cool to
Amazing.
summit it with my team. One guy got sick and had to turn back early, but yeah, most of us made it to the top.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I had read this book, The Seven Summits by Dick Bass. He was the first Well, it's a bit controversial, but I think he was the first person, or at least the first American, to climb the seven summits, the tallest peak in every continent. And I got
Yeah.
really just excited about that. Like, okay, there's a cool adventure. You know, I wonder if I could make a life in the mountains somehow, like climbing the seven summits, doing these big adventures. And it was just like one of those ideas that was like a wild hair that just kept embedding and sort of getting stronger and stronger in my brain. And I couldn't shake it.
Yeah.
I could have taught school forever, but I just had this other dream that maybe I could make a life in the mountains. And, that wasn't really like something probably many venture capitalists would have invested in at the time, the blind climbing business. But now I'm 52 years old. And so I've been climbing and adventuring for 20 something years now, full time.
Yeah, that's you've carved out an amazing life. At that point, when you decided, right, I'm going to try and go for the seven summits, I feel like I could do this with my life. Were you thinking? I know, because I know it's one of them. Obviously, was Everest at the front of your mind, or were you kind of pushing it to the back at that point?
I was pushing it to the back. No, it was
Yeah,
in the back for sure. Yeah. Cause I'm a huge procrastinator. I'm like, look, just take this step by step.
yeah,
Maybe you get this, that'd be a cool thing just to get six of the seven, right?
yeah, yeah,
Maybe Everest is like not really realistic. And, I just, you listen to these experts and they're like, they give you like all kinds of amazing reasons why you should never go there, especially as a blind person. And then
yeah,
I started thinking, well, like, what do they know about blindness? Like just what they've read or what their own fears are.
yeah,
And so I started climbing with friends, and we'd have these huge adventures, climbing the north face of Mount Adams, and you'd be out for 24 hours and navigating some pretty serious terrain. And, those kind of people were like, yeah, man, you got it. You got what it takes. I don't know if you'll get to the top, but you've earned your right to be there. You should try. And
yeah,
so at that point, it's just like, okay, who am I going to listen to? Back to being impressionable. Am I going to listen to these naysayers who don't even know me, or and judging me on the basis of one thing, or am I going to listen to these people who have watched me and have spent time with me and connected with me and actually know me beyond Eric the blind guy?
yeah. And so you managed to listen to those ones, the positive voices.
Yeah, you choose them, and you got the same voices in your brain, right? So
Yeah,
it sometimes takes external forces, good people who believe in you, who say, yeah, man, you, as I said, you've earned your right to be there. For me, that's really important because I always want to feel like I've earned my spot to be there. I don't want to be a blind guy getting dragged to the summit and spiked on top like a football. I want to be there for a reason.
yeah, definitely. So with Everest, you obviously had the belief that you could do it, but I think from reading your book, there was lots of doubt, right, in your mind. And was that the same the whole way up, or when you started the actual climb, you're like, okay, no more doubt, this is it, focus now? Was it there nagging
Well,
away?
yeah, because like any brain can get overwhelmed by the weight of it all. The doubt, the
Yeah,
fear, the anxiety, the uncertainty. I mean, that can just pile up on your heart and soul and just really crush you and throw you back into that prison
yeah,
that I never really wanted to go back into. But I somehow, maybe from going blind and, joining the wrestling team and starting climbing, just saying, okay, like I just have to keep an open heart here because I'm not going to like wish myself away or wish myself into failure, like I want to keep an open heart and see if this is possible or see how high I can get. I mean, because I did think that it was possible for someone blind, maybe not me, but
yeah,
somebody blind I thought could do this. And so why not try to do it? While at the same time, knowing that like I had a family and I have at that time, my daughter Emma was only 2 years old, and, I wasn't going to go up there and, push myself to the point where I fall down and die in the snow.
yeah.
I figured I could turn back gracefully and somehow survive that failure.
No, it's just astounding, that feat. It must have been amazing. Like the feeling on top. How did that feel? just the sensations of the wind and the elevation, the altitude. What was that like?
Well, so like there's this perception that like you get to the summit and it's like this, the sky is all around you, and like you suddenly have an epiphany of like how to reach nirvana or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, you're really just sitting up on this little tiny island in the sky, really nervous about getting down alive.
Yeah. True.
There is a moment where you let go and you cry and you hug and you're like, oh my gosh, we are here. Like there's nowhere else to go. But at the same time, there's always this part underneath where you're like, I got a long way to get down here. And so every step counts, and 90% of accidents happen on the way down. So it's just like, you can't lose your focus until you're fully down. The Sherpas, even on Everest, they say the summit of Everest is not that summit. It's you're only at the halfway summit. And so don't blow it. And then PV was screaming on the radio, our team leader, like, hey, get down. The clouds are coming in. Weather's changing. And so we took that pressure. We were probably only on the summit for 20 minutes and then turned around and you head on down and back into the world of humans. Yeah.
And so PV, you said he was your expedition leader. He's the guy that said to you, don't let Everest be the greatest thing you ever do, isn't he?
Yeah. I got down from the mountain and, we haven't talked about this, but the Khumbu Icefall is like a blind person's worst nightmare. It's like 2,500 feet of jumbled up boulders of ice. And it's just like, if you really hated a blind person, that's where you would put them. Like if I hated like a blind person's guts, I would just stick them in the middle of the icefall and say, okay, have a nice day. So every step can kill you. It's like every step is different. The boulders are rolling and shifting under your weight. There's huge drop-offs. You're zigzagging on snow bridges, the width of your boot. You're jumping from boulder to boulder of ice. You're crossing ladders, like where you have to really get your crampon points like precisely over the rungs. So there's a lot going on. And then the icefall is like collapsing and exploding. And you want to minimize your time in the icefall. So anyway, I got down through the icefall that last time and I was like, I'm alive. I'm healthy. Like I've lost almost 40 pounds, but I'm feeling okay. And then that's when PV pulled me aside and congratulated me. And then he said, hey, dude, he said, do me a favor. He said, don't make this mountain the greatest thing you ever do. And, I was like, at that time I was thinking like, PV, that's really bad timing of your motivational advice. Right. But, cause I want to go home, man, and eat chocolate croissants and drink hazelnut lattes and hang out with my daughter and smell the flowers and stuff. Maybe, for the next 50 years, like maybe that was it. That was the climax, and what PV was saying, it took me a while to really process it, because it was kind of so weirdly shocking at the time. But it was, I guess, don't make this like, part of your resume. Don't make this a trophy on the shelf, where you look back on your glory days, and, use this as a catalyst for launching or propelling yourself to these new places. Like each experience is there to teach you something, to be meaningful, as something that kind of propels you forward to this new surprising place. And that was like the best advice anyone ever gave me, because really that was the foundation of starting No Barriers, my organization, climbing, kayaking, so many things that got to come after that climb.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I was going to say, for what it's worth, I don't think it was the greatest thing you ever did do. So mission accomplished there.
Nice.
I'm not going to like speculate as to what I think is the greatest, but I mean, one of the ones that stands out to me, maybe in my opinion, it might be the greatest, but I'm sure there's even others I don't know about, is Lhakpa Ri. So it takes us back to Everest again, pretty much.
Yeah.
The expedition with the blind orphans from Tibet. Yeah. With six blind children. Like, that's just inspiring, amazing, unbelievable, all at the same time. So just tell me a little bit about that whole experience. If you want, you can go from when you got the letter, or jump in at whatever point you want, I guess.
Yeah, well, I was getting after Everest like all these letters and requests from people, like some of them were so really, I mean, I know I'm exaggerating here, but I don't remember the exact things or requests, but like they were literally like, come and try tightrope walking, and across the two buildings, or try, like I want to launch you on this giant catapult, and there's like a Velcro wall, and you're going to be in a Velcro suit and you'll stick to the wall. It'll be super cool. And I'm like, I'm not some like blind uh, stunt man or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not just
Yeah.
like looking for ways to die.
Yeah.
Things have to have meaning to me. They have to, they're exciting when you start these processes of where you're trying to learn something or do something big. And you start with all questions and really no answers, and then you sort of engineer your way forward step by step. There's a lot of flailing and bleeding, but to go through that process, it has to mean something to you. So I didn't want to just be like throwing myself at these dumb adventures. I wanted it to be important stuff. And so when I got the letter from Sabria,
Yeah.
he was a blind German lady who tried to get into the equivalent of the Peace Corps in Germany, and they were like, we don't send blind people into the field. You're a liability. And I might get myself in trouble, but yeah, I've been over to Germany several times, and it is a bit of a regimented society where, like, they want to steer blind people into very specific careers. Be a lawyer, proven things, massage therapists, right? But she really wanted to like break out and forge her own path. So she scraped up some money and went over to Tibet. She studied Tibetology in college. And so she actually developed the written code in Braille in the Sanskrit of Tibetan. So actually, before that, blind kids couldn't even be literate in Tibetan.
Wow.
So she developed that. She went over there. She rode horseback through the countryside. She found that people just didn't know what to do with their blind kids, because they're out there, trying to survive, subsistence farming and, thrashing the barley and herding the yaks. And these blind kids, they didn't know what to do with them. They were like tied to beds in dark rooms, and, and they just didn't have much of a future. So she started putting the word out that she was going to start a school. And over time, she built this amazing project called Braille Without Borders, that was working with hundreds of kids and hundreds of adults that were that would go through an agricultural program. The kids would really get educated with computers and Braille literacy and
Right.
and mobility. But the older folks, that went blind at an older age, they would get steered into this agricultural program where they were actually growing things and making money and selling their products to restaurants and things like that. So,
Wow.
In Tibet, there's a perception that if you are blind or disabled, that you've done something really, probably bad in a past life to deserve it, right?
Yeah.
There's like this kind of cosmic sense of fairness, like, well, maybe they deserved it, maybe they were cruel or they were a murderer or something in a past life. So now they're just paying their penance. And so it's a hard life for the kids in Tibet. So
Yeah.
I told Sabria, I said, well, why I'd love to come over and take your kids climbing. Like, let's train some of your kids to climb, and then let's go do a really big peak and show them just like what's possible in their lives, just open up like big dramatic possibilities for them, sort of like Sabria had done. So anyway, yeah, that's how that expedition started. And we trained 6 of her kids, and then we tried to climb this peak called Lhakpa Ri, which was a 23,000 foot peak.
Yeah.
We didn't get to the top, but we got pretty high, and the kids had a grand adventure.
You got to the blind summit, didn't you? You got to the ice palace, which I just thought was such an amazing ending to that story.
Yeah, well, I mean, the weather was just coming in constantly. It was super cold. The kids were, some of them had gotten altitude sickness and were headed down, but I still had like four of the kids. And I was like, the summit is sort of losing its meaning, and
Yeah.
what could be our alternative summit. And right out of that camp was this edge of the glacier where it creates this kind of ice labyrinth. The way I describe it sometimes is like, if you've seen the old Superman movies, he goes to his ice labyrinth, his layer of ice. And it's like that. It's just weaving and bobbing like little corridors and hallways. And then, the ice create all these crazy shapes, almost like clouds, like you might imagine one is an elephant and one is a sword and one is a monster, a big serpent. And so we went up into that ice fall, that ice palace, and we played for the whole day. And the kids were riding ice elephants and having ice sword fights. And I thought, God, this is so bizarre, because this is like a better summit than the true summit. True summit would have been like, okay, we're here standing on top, high five. You can't even see out there. But this was like a tactile, auditory, kinesthetic experience for the kids. And that wound up being the blind summit.
Yeah, no, I thought that was awesome. Like, it allowed them to cap it off with like just a fun day or a fun few hours or whatever it was of just making noises and breaking stuff and playing with it, and just brilliant.
But the learning that I got from that was that, you do get on track, right? Because if you're climbing a mountain, right, you're full of logistics and you got to figure out how to get from point A to point B, and you only have so much food and time and resources and energy. But I guess, it's so hard, but you have to keep your mind open to what are the things happening around you, and what are the sort of facts and data and, nuances that are maybe steering you in a different direction. Like, is your mind open to something different? And so that was a hard lesson for me, because I'm pretty damn linear.
Yeah. You're normally chasing the summits, and that kind of, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, that's what you're there to do, to stand on the summit.
Yeah.
So you gotta, if you don't have focus and like just a relentless focus to that pursuit, you're not really going to get to the top of anything.
Yeah. But I see what you're saying. No, valuable lesson in terms of the summit is not always the summit, isn't it? It's the finish point might not always be the typical finish point, the normal place.
Well, what I learned also, you're right, like that bled into other future learnings, was that when I planned expeditions in the future after that, I'd always sit everyone down. And I say, why are you here? Like, I want to get to the summit, but what do you want to do? And it's amazing that what you find out, right? Some people are like, I'm lonely and I just want to be a part of something. I don't care whether I summit or not. So if you find out why are the people there, what's their motivation, right? Like, then man, you fix a lot of problems before they happen.
Yeah.
You can steer everyone towards the win that they're looking for.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, everybody has their own goals, their own wins. Are you still in touch with the kids? And when was it? Sorry, as well, Lhakpa Ri. What year was that?
2004. Way
2004.
back.
Yeah, exactly. So that's
the kids are like in their 30s now, and they're doing well. They all run businesses and things like that. And but what the sad part is, and this is the reality of this situation, is that Braille Without Borders were like summarily dismissed from Tibet in the last couple of years. So
really,
it's really sad, because it was doing such good work, and so the Chinese came in and just shut them down. They're just really scared of seeing what's going on in Tibet, of people, eyeballs seeing what's happening in Tibet, and so they don't really want external NGOs there, because they just are so fearful that maybe they're political, or maybe they're exposing them for something. And so, the Tibet's really become very much more closed off. I believe the school they shut down, and they sent people back to their neighborhood schools, which means just sweep everyone under the carpet again. I believe that the farm for the older folks who are blind is still in operation. So, but in the time that Sabria and Paul were there, they really did turn blindness and disability on its head. Those kids were the most educated kids in Tibet.
Yeah.
There were people that were pretending to be blind so they could go to the school. It was
Wow.
so good.
Yeah. And I guess actually a lot of those kids and Sabria and Paul and just the whole kind of influence from that Braille Without Borders probably has changed a lot of the perspective on blind people in Tibet, I would imagine.
Yeah, no, I think the repercussions have definitely extended all the way to today because,
Yeah.
yeah, like these kids that met and climbed with, they were becoming translators. They were running their own businesses. They were finishing at very prestigious schools in Beijing and so forth. And so, yeah, life has definitely changed um, for the blind, I think, and I think that will last will hopefully a long time. And Sabria and Paul moved off to India and started a model of Braille Without Borders for all people, a lot of them with disabilities from developing countries who want to run a Braille Without Border type organization, some kind of social entrepreneurial organization. And
Yeah.
so that's called
Cool.
Kintari, I think, and it's and so they're training people from all over the world in Kerala, India now.
Yeah. To go and do their own thing and make their own difference and
Exactly.
do it that way. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Oh, look, there's so many different things I want to talk to you about. We could go like down the route of the Grand Canyon. We could go down the route of like, your parachuting, paragliding, skydiving. I want to talk to you about the brain port. Let's do no barriers though. Although
Okay.
some of these we're going to have to come back to. I'm going to have to get you on this show again.
We'll do a
And
part two for
and
sure.
yeah, that'd be really good because there's so many things. Like I say, even without scratching the ice, really, there's still too many. But yeah, let's talk a bit about no barriers. Tell me again. Well, I know some things about it, but most people listening probably don't. So tell me kind of how that originated, how it became about, and how it's got to where it is today, which is inspiring hundreds of people all around the world.
Well, um, so as PV said, one experience sort of becomes a catalyst to the next. So
Yeah,
Mark Wellman, one of my heroes, he saw, all the Everest footage, and he is a paraplegic who was the first paraplegic person to climb El Capitan, which is this gigantic 3,000-foot granite monolith in Yosemite Valley. And so
yeah,
he did that in the 80s by basically inventing this system that he could do pull-ups up the rope. And he did like 7,000 pull-ups and got to the summit. And it was
it's amazing.
just so tremendous, like, the word inspiring gets used maybe too much, but this was like truly like mind blowing. And so
Yeah,
Mark was always one of my heroes. He's maybe like, I don't know, 10 years older than me, maybe. And so he invited me on a project that he was calling Beyond the Barriers. And it was a film project. Him and myself, and then this guy, Hugh Herr, who was a double leg amputee, who built his own prosthetic legs and feet with special rubber for climbing and special shapes for his feet to wedge into cracks and stand on little tiny edges and things like that. He was a tremendous climber. So the three of us climbed this cool rock face out in the Utah desert, and we became good friends. And then Mark reached out to us and said, "Hey, I'm thinking about this idea of this organization, like a movement where we could really bring people together with challenges and we could show them ideas and mindsets to kind of move forward, to break through barriers in their lives and contribute more to the world." And so Mark sucked me and Hugh both in, and we started growing this idea, and it just kept evolving and growing. And last year before the pandemic hit, we were working with like 20,000 people a year, both people with physical challenges,
wow.
but also people with invisible barriers, people who struggle with PTSD and anxiety and fear and all those
Yeah,
invisible things, and kids in the foster care system and first generation Americans and, caregivers who are the folks who take care of people with
yeah,
challenges and never get a break, or, their lives are totally invisible as they just serve others. So
yeah,
we wanted to bring all these groups out of the woodwork and really say, hey, let's be one community. Let's lean in. Let's solve problems. Let's illustrate, illuminate technologies and ideas and mindsets that can help you get out of the sidelines and break into life again. And so we do all these programs, hundreds of programs a year, to be able to to help people. And so, in a weird way, PV is saying, let Everest be a catalyst to new things. Well, No Barriers hopefully has been the catalyst to, lots of people doing things in their lives that they might not have done without it.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, even just the little bit I know about it from reading your book and other things about you, it's yeah, there's just inspired some amazing people to do some amazing things. I mean, like one example that jumps to mind is Kyle Maynard, who
Yeah.
crawled up Kilimanjaro. He's got four amputations. Yeah, all four of his limbs are amputated.
Yeah. Well, it was actually, I think, a birth defect. He was born without arms and legs.
Right. Okay. My bad.
So he was able to do all these amazing things. Like he wrestled in high school, and but I don't know a thing about this guy. He just showed up at our summit, and our summit is our big celebration where we bring all our communities, all our groups together into one community, and we celebrate what this life looks like through art and music and science and technology and
Yeah.
athletics. And so I was teaching a hiking clinic, and it was really cool. Like we had people who were amputees that were hiking with prosthetics and different kinds of like these things called side sticks, which are like these high tech um, crutches isn't the right word, but like they're a support system for people, and hand cycles for people who are paraplegics cranking their way up the mountain with their arms, and blind people that were using different systems. And Kyle shows up the day before this hiking clinic, and he's like, "Hey, I want to join your clinic." And nobody's telling me that this guy doesn't have arms and legs. So once I find that out, I'm like, well, in my mind, I'm like, okay, we're No Barriers, but how the heck? I don't like. I'm doesn't make me an expert, in this way, So we had a couple engineers and smart guys along with us, and they were like, okay, baby steps, baby steps. Went to his hotel room. We got bath towels. We stole bath towels.
Yeah.
And then we went to the desk, and we were like, you got some foam and some packing tape. And then we went and scrounged up some like shopping bags, I think. And then we pushed him to the base of the mountain in his chair, and he got out, and we wrapped his stumps up with bath towels, foam, packing tape, bath towel or shopping bags. And the guy flips over and starts crabbing his way to the summit. And about 8 hours later, he's at this 12,000-foot peak after crawling through snow and mud, over rock, like he'd do this crazy cool trick where he would like get to a boulder and he would kind of do like this somersault. We'd kind of like flip over the rock, little ninja tricks. And I was like, God, what a great lesson for me, right? Like, you get so overwhelmed by these things. Like, how do you start these big processes? Well, you start with the materials you got and what you can utilize at the time. If it's bath towels and packing tape, so be it. That's what you use. And you just get started and you blunder forward, hopefully as safely as you can. And then obviously bath towels and packing tape became, a thing of the past for Kyle, because he started developing cool prosthetics with carbon fiber and Vibram rubber soles and crampons that were like the lightweight crampons that he could screw onto his prosthetics. And so it turns out that our hike at No Barriers was just a catalyst to bigger things. So we went on to climb Kilimanjaro. I think he crabbed his way to the summit of Kilimanjaro in 11 days. And then he reached the summit of Aconcagua, the tallest peak in South America, 22,800 feet the next year. So
It's immense.
Kyle's, just a great example of somebody who will just never stop climbing in that metaphorical way.
Fits the perfect No Barriers. It makes me think of, in like sports, they talk about kind of coaching trees and stuff like that. So like this big coach, he's got all these other people in the league because of him or related to him in some way. I kind of look at you like that, and I think, like, imagine your inspiration tree. Like people like Kyle Maynard. So they were inspired by you to go on and accomplish these things. And now he's out there inspiring a whole new generation of people whilst you're still inspiring people. And there's
and
probably
I was
hundreds
inspired
of...
by Mark and Hugh, those guys. And we were all inspired by Terry Fox, who was a guy, a Canadian who had cancer, got cancer, and he had his leg amputated because of that. And he ran across Canada in the early 80s. I think he was like 21 or 2 years old. And
Yeah.
I remember that was like one of the last things I saw as a sighted person, just watching this guy kind of stagger his way across Canada on this old-fashioned prosthetic. And I just thought, okay, like you don't have to react in the way that that is the formula, like something bad happens and you just shrink and protect, you kind of fall into the scarcity mindset and protect the little bit you have left. Terry told me that, when things happen, you can get bigger, you
Yeah.
can be more expansive, you can create abundancy, as Stephen Covey said. And so that was like a paradigm shifter for me.
Yeah. Yeah, that was amazing. I remember reading about you watching Terry Fox, and that is just amazing what he did with that big old clunky prosthetic running across Canada.
Yeah.
We're getting to the end here, Eric. I don't want to keep you, so I'm just going to try and wrap this up with a couple of last questions here.
Awesome.
So just one for a bit of fun. Okay. So you've been interviewed by some of the just most well-known interviewers out there, right? So I wanted to ask who was the most impressive or just most enjoyable out of, let's say, these are the three names that jump to my mind. But if you have other ones, feel free to chuck them in there. Jay Leno, Oprah, Larry King.
Well, Jay Leno was really fun. I was on the Tonight Show after Everest, and they were we were trying to figure out like what would be the angle, and the producer was like, what would be really cool is if you just said, hey, Jay, I heard you have a really pointy chin. Do you mind if I just touch your chin? And I was like, no, I can't do that, man. That's too embarrassing. And I go, what if I gave Jay Leno my pee bottle from Mount Everest? The bottle because you don't want to get out of your tent when it's like 0 degrees. So you just pee in like this Nalgene bottle. I was like, what if I wrote his name on it and gave him my pee bottle as a keepsake? And they're like, no, we can't do that on national TV. So anyway, yeah, but Jay was really funny, and we stayed in touch. He did some charity stuff for the National Braille Press, and I got to meet Oprah. She was amazing. I obviously cried, and she hugged me on Oprah because that's her thing, get everyone to cry with this emotional story. And I met Tom Brokaw, which was on his show a bunch of times back in NBC Nightly News. And he's been a huge mentor because he's just such a kind guy. He doesn't have any airs or anything. And then Katie Couric was amazing. She's been so amazing. And Ann Curry from the Today Show. I just interviewed her on our podcast, Ann Curry, just a few months ago. So yeah, it's really nice to stay in touch with these folks.
Yeah, because it's quite a list, isn't it? It's quite a list of people you've had.
I went over to New Zealand and climbed Mount Cook, and on the way down, one of the guides that was climbing kind of nearby said, "Hey, you should call Edmund Hillary." And I go, "Yeah, right." And I'm like, "What is he in the phone book?" And they're like, "Yeah, he's actually in the phone book." So I picked up the phone and I called Edmund Hillary, and he's like, "Oh, yes, come on over for tea." So sorry, that was a really hideous Kiwi accent, by the way. But so he has me over for tea, and him and his wife are sitting there drinking tea with Edmund Hillary. And
that's insane.
Oh my gosh, it was so amazing.
This could be a whole new podcast in itself, just talking about all the people you've met and interacted with. Because I know you, just to quickly, you shook Muhammad Ali's hand, right? You sat next to Shaq on one of those. Was it Oprah or Larry King? I can't remember.
On
just
Tonight
amazing,
Show, right?
Amazing. So look, penultimate question. And this is inspired by something I heard you saying about similar things, I think about adversity. In this instance, I'm going to say blindness instead of adversity, just for your very specific situation. But I know you've faced a lot of other adversity. But do you think you've achieved all these amazing things you've achieved despite the blindness? Or do you think it's because of the fact you lost your sight?
There's this really old cheesy movie of Clint Eastwood. And he's Buffalo Bill Cody, and he's like this amazing shot, and he's like doing all these cool tricks and everything. And they're like, by the end of the movie, you're like, somebody says, like, what's your background? And it turns out he was a shoe salesman in New Jersey when he decided to become Buffalo Bill. So I tell that because, I do feel like Walter Mitty, like I do feel like, if I hadn't gone blind, like maybe I would have been a shoe salesman in New Jersey. Nothing wrong with being a shoe salesman in New Jersey, but my life might have been totally different, right? Because when you go blind or something bad happens to you, it makes you search. It makes you search for what's out there, like what's beyond that brick wall. And so in a way, it kind of fires up your life in certain ways. In a weird, ironic way, maybe blindness was some kind of advantage. Although I do think you can make anything in your life into a gift.
Yeah. Yeah, you can turn adversity into your favor. But I see. I think it like injected you with that fight, didn't it? That extra fight and that really that wanting to push through those barriers. So last question, or it's not really a question, but last thing then, let's say, if you could, again, there's not gonna be many people listening to this necessarily, but let's just imagine there are for a brief minute.
Okay.
What message would you want to pass to everybody that is listening and or watching right now?
Well, look, my advice is really simple. And that is that like, I didn't climb Everest alone. I connected with an amazing team of people. They put their lives in my hands. I put their lives in their hands. And so for me, I think if there is a secret weapon in life, it's connect with the right people. Build your rope team, build the people that you want to link your life to, because those people can elevate you, right? You can stand on their shoulders and they can stand on your shoulders. And so basically no barriers is that, right? Like how do we stand on each other's shoulders to live the kind of life that means no barriers to me. So I just hope people, like if you're struggling, if you're in the basement in the dark, eating ramen noodles, get out of that basement, man, and reach out, connect with something. Right now it's harder to do that, but you can connect with virtual experiences. The world is coming back into in-person kind of things. Get out there, right? Nobody's going to come to your dark basement. You gotta sort of take that first step and keep your heart open and join something, start a process, get around the kind of people that are going to elevate your life.
Perfect. Love it. Solid advice. Thank you so much, Erik.
All
really
right.
appreciate
Really
this
wonderful
today.
to hang with you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun and I'm already looking forward to doing it again.
Yeah, for sure. Let's do part 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
Take care, man. Thanks again. Have a good one.
No barriers.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to that conversation with Erik Weihenmayer. To hear Erik's full story, I recommend reading his book, No Barriers. The links for the book and for other ways to interact with Erik are in the episode description, along with links for this podcast. Erik, thank you for sharing your anecdotes and your amazing approach to life. Stay tuned for round 2 with Erik later this year. Be nice, be happy, be cool.